She held back her heat vision to look you in the face. She warmed her breath to converse with you. She slowed herself to walk beside you. Every moment of every day, she suppressed the forces churning inside of her. Today on the Comic Book Report, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm finally covering Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Becoming a growing fan of Tom King in conjunction with James Gunn's DCU announcement regarding Supergirl, I knew that this was a title I had to read, and I can't wait to review it for all of you today. Before we dive in though, if you're looking to get your own copy, please check out our channel sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. You can use my code, TheComicBookReport, at checkout to receive $2 off of your order today. Please note, if you use my affiliate code or link to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a great way to support the channel at no additional cost to you. Thank you for considering, now on with the show. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Tom King and illustrated by Bilquis. The issues in this volume were published by DC Comics beginning in 2021. The volume itself collects Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, issues 1 through 8. And finally, this standard-size trade paperback comes in at 208 pages. At this time, I'd like to issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first look at that standard-size trade paperback from DC Comics. And right from the jump, on the cover, you are treated to the gorgeous artwork from Evely. This is my first time encountering this artist's work, and I am absolutely floored. Right away, I knew Tom King was a selling point for me, but seeing the art attached to this, just wow. As far as the construction and format of the book, it is a standard-size paperback with matte print paper stock and a glued binding, which I'll show momentarily. Nothing too special here. I would love to see this get a deluxe or absolute treatment because I might be willing to double dip for a story this incredible. Now you can see a quick look at that back cover before we go ahead and take a look at this paperback's binding. Jumping over to the binding now, I'll give you a look here. Again, it's glued, but there's no real issues for me here. It is a smaller series. I didn't find the gutter loss to be anything too critical, anything like that. My book seems to be holding together well. No complaints from me for the construction of this book. A really well-made trade paperback. Okay, and now we can go ahead and dive into the collection proper. We're going to have some title pages, publication information, and your general front matter before diving into the first issue of the 8-issue miniseries. As we make our way into this book, I do want to say as well, you don't really need any prior experience with Supergirl to enjoy this narrative. It's a perfect entry point for new readers as well as longtime fans, as far as I can tell. And for my money, it's one of my favorite standalone graphic novels I've read in some time. As far as the storyline goes, or a general synopsis, at its core, this story is really a story about revenge, a coming-of-age story, a story about friendship and power, and it does all of this really simultaneously. The story of Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow begins with the exposition and narration of our whole story's primary narrator, which is Ruthye. Ruthye is an adolescent girl on an alien planet. She is part of a small farming family in a kind of backwoods planet under a red sun. The story really begins when her father is viciously and brutally murdered by a king's agent who's come and just kind of wreaked this havoc on this family before departing. This murderer goes by the name of Creme of the Yellow Hills and functions as this whole story's antagonist. The story really does follow Ruthye as she then goes on this quest for vengeance, trying to avenge her father's death. She gets the family sword and goes to try to enlist some kind of mercenary or assassin or hunter to help her take down this vicious man. Her first attempt to recruit someone to take down this murderer ends with her being kind of beaten and robbed before Supergirl intervenes. We find Supergirl drunken at this bar, celebrating her birthday on this distant planet. Under a red sun, she is depowered, and we find her in kind of maybe not dire straits, but in a really low position in her life. We know that she's basically overshadowed by Superman back on Earth, and she's trying to find her own identity, place in the world, where she goes from here, what she stands for, and really hope again. This is a character who has witnessed the destruction of her home planet Krypton and is trying to find her way. Well, after she intervenes with Ruthye in this bar, the two of them seek out after Krem of the Yellow Hills. Supergirl really doesn't want to get entangled and certainly doesn't want to murder this other person, but she goes with Ruthye to kind of help her out. They get attacked by Krem of the Yellow Hills and some of his associates. Supergirl's dog Crypto, who is also depowered under a red sun, gets almost fatally wounded, and they are left there as Krem of the Yellow Hills takes Supergirl's spaceship and flies away. Supergirl, of course, does not have her powers, so she slowly begins to nurse back to health before agreeing to follow Ruthye to track down Krem of the Yellow Hills. She justifies it as hoping that Krem has an antidote to the poison that her dog Crypto was hit with, and also just to be a companion for this, in many ways, lost young woman Ruthye. After kind of hitchhiking off of that planet, they go from planet to planet in the pursuit of Krem. And from this point in the story, it becomes sort of a buddy road trip kind of narrative in some ways. There's a lot of just deep philosophical underpinnings and a real beautiful coming-of-age story through that narrative from Ruthye as she both examines her situation and really analyzes her new companion, Supergirl. I do want to point out at this time as well that in the narration of Ruthye, we have this really intelligent, precocious, and again, philosophical, wordy kind of exposition prose. It's very beautiful in its lyricism. And to me, this really screams of a Tom King flourish. I really appreciated the narration we got throughout his Batman run, and in many ways, the narration we have in Supergirl is even more, I guess, erudite. But I was really amazed. I loved it, and it really helped ground me with this central character and the storytelling we got to witness throughout. As far as the story goes, again, they go from planet to planet in their pursuit of Krem. Along the way, Supergirl really wows Ruthye with her tenderness, compassion, and strength. We also have Supergirl kind of righting wrongs as she goes into these communities around these different planets. In this way, there is kind of a Western theme that I noticed, or motif that's often explored in Westerns, where you have this wandering hero that kind of comes into town, rights a wrong, and then passes off into the sunset. And we see that throughout. One interesting touch, too, I liked is that because they go to different planets, we have Supergirl at different varying degrees of strength. In the story's beginning, we have her under a red sun where she has no powers. We eventually go into kind of a bright yellow-like sun, giving her, her normal Supergirl powers. At one point, there's, I think, a green sun. I mean, there's just so many different kind of mechanics here that kind of kill her, depower her, or, really power her. And I really liked that because I think with the Superman kind of family of characters, they really are, well, super powered. And so to have that kind of conflict in the environment, it really helps show who this character is beyond just her powers. And I think that this is maybe one of the most stunning examples of what makes this book so incredible, is that Supergirl is the same regardless of her power status. She holds herself in exact same way. She has this kind of character integrity that is really just awesome to behold. Yes, when she's empowered, we get to see her in all of her might, but we see her demonstrate different kinds of strength even as her superpowers ebb and flow. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video and you have yet to subscribe to my channel, I highly encourage you to do so. I would appreciate it. Thank you for your consideration. As the story progresses, we find that Krem has joined an intergalactic band of horrid pirates and kind of these mercenary creatures known as the Brigands. At that point, Supergirl and Ruthye are still in pursuit of Krem and his whole band of pirates, but they kind of start to visit these worlds that have been decimated by this crew, and they basically play cleanup. They try to do everything they can, again, righting wrongs, helping to empower the people, things like that. and ultimately they catch up to Krem, who then banishes Supergirl and Ruthye to the other side of the universe using some kind of special magic that Supergirl is susceptible to. This is another planet where Supergirl is kind of slowly dying under a green kryptonite-empowered sun, and Ruthye basically has to serve as her protector as she tries to survive. And we get to see Ruthye really step up into her own role and place as a hero in her own right. Though she might not describe herself as one, we can really see Supergirl's influence on her to kind of be the best that she can be. And ultimately, they get back to Krem, and we have kind of the whole story's central climax, and as they get into the conclusion, and we have Ruthye kind of coming to terms with how she wants to enact her vengeance or not, and ultimately, the day is saved. And I'll say personally, reading the last few pages that wrap up this story's central conflicts almost brought me to the point of tears. I really got to see a distilled look at what it means to be a hero, stand for virtue and right, and just be so authentically yourself. I was so floored, again, just absolutely amazed and just awed at what Tom King and Bilquis Evely were able to accomplish in just 8 issues. It was a wonderful story. The resolution was absolutely stunning, and there was even a little bit of an epilogue at the very end of the story that just wrapped it all up. That was kind of humorous and interesting in its own right. But overall, that is really the whole synopsis of Supergirl. There are, of course, a lot more specifics and twists and turns that I will want you to experience for yourself reading the narrative, because I don't know that I'll be able to do it complete justice. And frankly, I want you to check out this beautiful book for yourself. Outside of the storyline, I do want to again talk about Evely's contribution in their artwork. It's absolutely crisp, incredible. There's a kind of watercolor-like look to it. I don't even know that it is watercolor, but it feels like that to me. The coloring on this book is absolutely gorgeous. It has a sort of otherworldly and surreal quality to it. I really love the kind of swirls and kind of rounded shapes and detail work that Evely does throughout this whole book. It has this dreamy kind of feel that you feel like you're reading some kind of fable, some kind of mythical story, and I think it lends itself so well to a Supergirl story, to a coming-of-age story, and to a kind of interplanetary just adventure like what it is. The art absolutely fits the narrative, and I think that this team has really crafted something to look out for. I have no doubt that this will go down as an absolute modern classic. And for me, this is my favorite work that features Supergirl. I should probably qualify that statement. I have not read any solo Supergirl comics. This is my first foray into a solo title. I have seen Supergirl pop up in a bunch of stories throughout the years, and I know she's a very beloved character. But to me, this is just such a high watermark for the comic book industry right now, and I cannot wait to see even more people read this, talk about this, especially in the wake of James Gunn's DCU announcement, trying to adapt this in some form. I know that that was one of the reasons I had such urgency to finally get around to reading this, and honestly, I'm kicking myself for waiting so long. This is an incredible book that I think should be on every comic collector's bookshelf. It's just that good. I think if you like superhero comics, or even if you're more a fan of indie comics, there is something to love for all audiences in this book. Again, I was just really amazed. I think that the writing throughout is really elevated, but absolutely works for the storytelling. Again, this is some of the cleanest, crisp Tom King writing I have had the pleasure of reading, and I know there's still more out there from King I still want to read, but again, this was just spellbinding. I think for fans of the kind of narration, again, you might have seen in the Batman Rebirth era, there is something reminiscent in the narration here, but I think it's even more elevated and more focused and, again, clearer in this storytelling, and I really loved that. I'm also really amazed at how King was able to do such an epically scoped story about such an intimate conflict. I think it just works on such a human level, on such a interpersonal, small-scale level, even as they span this whole universe. I'm really amazed. It's ultimately a story about this character who's lost her father and wants a sense of justice in a growingly chaotic world. We have her coming of age. We have her influenced by so many factors factors, and she grows up in such a harsh circumstance, and to see her transform and grow and just kind of contemplate and dissect and analyze these situations as they come. She again serves as the narrator, reflecting back on her life and these instances where she went on these journeys with Supergirl. And I think again, it's just really, really powerful. And I think that because King rooted this in such a personal, character-driven place, it made the epic scope of this story even more powerful, because you're so locked into these two central characters of Supergirl and Ruthye. I also think Krem of the Yellow Hills was a fantastic villain. Again, he's pursued for most of it, so we only actually have him seen in a few key issues and scenes. Ultimately, in the end of the book, we do have him present quite a bit more, but he is just fiendish, and in some ways you would almost think irredeemable, and yet the influence of Supergirl and eventually Ruthye, there is a transformative effect even with this terrific villain. I think ultimately Supergirl really is a story of hope amidst defeat and darkness and doubt, and it was just a really good read. Like, you walk away feeling so good after reading it, and I really loved that. I think again it distilled so many of these elements of what it means to be a superhero and a super person, and I really just loved that. I love that the storytelling could be so pure and good, even with so much darkness and death and sadness throughout this storytelling. We have an ultimately good wrap-up story that leaves you feeling hopeful and like you want to do more. And I think that that is so much in the nature of Supergirl as a character, and I love seeing that revealed through this narrative by Tom King and Bilquis Evely. There's a variant cover art gallery at the back, along with some sketches and other special features, and that is Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. Now all that's left is to give this collection a grade. For this stunning, standalone comic book miniseries, The Comic Book Report is happy to give Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King and Bilquis Evely an A. This is an absolute must-read recommendation from me for any comic book fan out there. I think if you're a fan of Supergirl or the Super family in general, this is a no-brainer must-read. But I think for anyone out there, there's so much this story offers, and I think it has kind of a timeless storytelling aspect to it. To me, this will undoubtedly be considered a modern classic and something that is discussed for some time. I am so eager to see any kind of live-action adaptation we could get from this book. And until then, I sincerely look forward to reading what you think about Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. I think that's going to do it today for the Comic Book Report. If you enjoyed this, please don't forget to give this video a like and maybe check out some of my others. Have a good one.